When you're in the military, you enter knowing that you're going to be subjected to certain things. You know that you're signing a blank check to give your life for your country. You know that you can die any day, at any given time, in the service of your country. What you don't know, whether you're male or female, it doesn't matter. You don't know, and you should not expect to have to know, that you could be raped and subjected to criminal activity by superiors at any time, and that it would be okay. That if you reported it, if you were able to report it, that's saying you could report it, you would be dishonorably discharged. There is no one who should be subjected to that. No women, no young boys or men should be subjected to sexual assault while trying to do their job, whether they're civilians or military. It doesn't matter. Whether they're high school athletes trying to play on a football team or gymnasts trying to prepare for the Olympics. Sexual assault is wrong at every level. But when you join the military, people have an opinion that women who are raped, well, you should have known. That's to be expected. You're part of the military uh, government issue. So, meaning, whatever happens to you is your own fault. If you are raped, your government issue, it's to be expected. Nothing will happen to the man. If you say anything, you're going to be dishonorably discharged. Can you imagine the young women who faced that doctor this past week saying that they were upset and that they lived with the trauma that he had done to them over their life, their young lives? Can you imagine what would happen if the judge said not guilty? Or if the jury said not guilty, time served? What would this country do? Would people be upset? People are upset that he's going to prison for 140 years. Like the judge said, he should never breathe free air. He should never walk free on this planet ever again. That's what should happen to people in the military who rape women and boys who are trying to do their job. That is what should happen, but it doesn't. What happens is those young troops, those young enlisted personnel, male and female, are dishonorably discharged. They're charged with being absent without leave because they're scared to go back to their unit because their commander is assaulting them. Can you imagine having your commander, the commander of your unit, raping you? And you're a young man, and that commander is a man? Can you imagine that? How about imagining that a woman is raped and her commander is that same commander who raped young boys? And the military decided to do nothing to him. They actually promoted him. Tell me what you would think, because I'm curious. I am curious why it is that we give voices only to the young, to the actors and actresses, and nothing to the women who take up arms to protect our nation, to the boys who take up arms to protect our nation. The officers in charge of these troops, the enlisted personnel in charge of these troops, are allowed to have their sexual pleasure and not pay a price. Not at all. You have comedians that are being taken to court 50 years after the fact. There's a 5-year time limit. But there are people prosecuting a comedian 50 years after the fact when events at that time, social acceptance for drugs was totally different than today. It was acceptable for people to take certain drugs. Quaaludes were acceptable at the time that man was doing what he was doing. People took them, men and women took them. Young girls attended parties at Playboy mansions where nudity was common. Troops, women and men in the military wear uniforms that cover them head to toe, and they're raped. They're guilty of whatever it was that enlisted or officer did to them because they reported it. Trust me, there's a big difference in going to a party and being raped because you're actively involved in something you probably shouldn't be, but even then, you're not guilty of asking somebody to rape you. Never is that acceptable. So the fact that someone's on trial 50 years after the fact is a little bit scary because there's no evidence. He said, she said, he said. That's it. Memories have faded. People have spoken up today where they didn't speak up 20 years ago. So, are we putting people to a different standard today than there was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago? We are. Are we putting people to a different standard in the civilian world than we are in the military world? We are. We are saying to our troops, you should know it was bound to happen. You took that job. It's an all-male world. No, it's not. Women have been in the military for centuries. They've fought by their men for centuries. It's not new. What's new is that we don't hold officers and senior NCOs accountable for the crimes they commit because we allow them to lie. We allow them to get rid of the evidence, the people who were victimized. We can't do that anymore. We have to speak up. We have to listen to those young girls who had the courage to stand in court and say, enough. We're survivors because we're an army of survivors. Where are the army of survivors that actually served in the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Marines, the Coast Guard? Where are those survivors? Please, somebody tell me where those survivors are, because I can tell you, those are the victims that are being re-victimized because they don't find a voice. They don't have anyone standing up for them. They don't have anyone protecting them. What they have is people trying to dishonorably discharge them, trying to take away their permanent and total disability rating, trying to quiet them. Sit down and mind your own business. That's what veterans and military service personnel have. Gymnasts have a voice. Children have a voice. Football players have a voice. Soldiers, airmen, Marines, seamen, Coast Guardsmen, they are being silenced. It is time for the silence to stop. It is time to give the veterans and the military personnel their voice back. Do not allow the VA or the military, the government, to continue to silence the victims of their crimes. Do not silence the voices of the airmen, the Marines, the soldiers, the seamen, and the Coast Guardmen. Because when you silence those voices, you silence every voice. Give them their voice back.